Welcome, Unicornium. Blue Unicorn here. In our last episode, Blue Unicorn mused about how wearing a costume can and does change the behavior of the wearer. Furthermore, in today's episode, we will further explain why this is, and even worse, how it can lead to serious consequence. This is Serial 4 of Blue Unicorn Presents One Bad Apple. The term de-individuation refers to the changes that occur within the psyche of an individual that is immersed within a crowd. An individual will often believe that a group will hide the identity of the individual and can have an influence on the behavior of that individual. Within this sea of people, a person gains a sense of anonymity and will act in ways they would not normally act. A normally peaceful person may become aggressive or even violent if there is a riot going on around them. A normally sensible girl might decide to flash her boobs to the crowd of strangers at Mardi Gras in turn for some plastic beads simply because many other women are also doing it. A person is more likely to engage in these sorts of activities because of this phenomena known as de-individuation. De-individuated behavior is atypical for the individual and can be very emotional, dangerously impulsive, and even completely irrational. Even though they are still conscious that they are still an individual going along with the group. However, when one becomes de-individuated from their actual self, the consequences can be severe. This can be further explained by a real live human being named Dr. Philip Zimbardo. In his book, The Lucifer Effect, Dr. Philip Zimbardo writes of this thing called de-individuation of self. Quote, "The first seed for true evil is de-individuation of self. When a person wears a mask, they need not to blend in with the crowd to feel de-individuated. Sometimes even a small group of exclusive membership, such as the Freemasons or the high priesthood of some religious order, etc., will suffice. When a person changes their appearance and is given some title of self-importance, it sows the seeds of corruption and evil. This de-individuation was seen far back in ancient times where a holy person wore a mask and became a spirit or something, to the modern-day mirror sunglasses of a highway patrolman who sees all, while his prey is oblivious. The mask creates a presumed anonymity, a separate persona, and a separation behind which their true nature lies, be it good or bad. In the now debunked Stanford prison experiment, the main guard admitted in an interview that when he first put on the uniform and the sunglasses, he decided to don the persona of a tough southern prison guard that he saw in a movie. Skeptics of the experiment say that because this guard and his friends were just playing around, that it somehow invalidated the study. Blue Unicorn believes the opposite. You see, the mere act of wearing the mask caused the wearer to, in fact, pretend to be a different person by his own admission. So when a timid and weak individual wears the militarized uniform of a code enforcer, who is to say that psychologically the wearer doesn't feel more powerful, or at least pretend to be, if only to fool themselves? Now, envision a group of de-individuated individuals that are acting whilst de-individuated from themselves. The de-individuation of self requires one to separate from the personal identity and conform to that of the group. The authoritarian of this group becomes the giver of truth. In other words, de-individuated people do not think for themselves and believe themselves only to be part of a greater whole, and therefore their actions are not their own, but that of the group itself, and grants power and anonymity from behind this mask of the collective group. Everyone in this group is acting this way, therefore one can get away with acting this way, and one is not one's own self, because the costume and mask makes one above one, not one, but something greater than. Therefore, what this group does must be right and just. One is not one, but the group itself. In societies where a person of authority wears a uniform or a costume to separate themselves from the common people, they have a much higher propensity for violence as they feel an otherness or separation, placing themselves into a more dominant hierarchy, and their true identities are hidden behind that mask of perception. Whereas in societies where the authority figures wear the same clothes as everyone else, the propensity for violence is much lower as they are perceived to be on the same level as everyone else and vice versa. The bigger picture, however, is the systemic issues inherent with the use of force occupation. The nature of the job is that use of violent force is expected, and having empathy is discouraged. And so now a person behind this mask begins to undergo a psychological makeover. To a person de-individuated from themselves, and now being immersed into a collective of masked individuals, one might begin to think and act like this collective. So this person may engage in the most aberrant activities and believes their own actions to be incidental. The individual bears no responsibility for this thing that they do, as this group of masked individuals, of which said person is a member, train this person to act that way. And so it is not only wrong, but even correct. And so, because a mask can hide the identity of its wearer, there's no way to know who is wearing it until it is either okay or too late. Thus concludes Serial 4 of Blueunicorn Presents One Bad Apple. Stay tuned for Part D of
Blueunicorn Presents One Bad Apple, the Psychopath.